Okay, so if you're an artist trying to make a truly great record, you've definitely asked yourself this question: who do I actually need to hire? A producer? An engineer? Are they even different people? Let's get right into it because honestly, understanding this one difference is probably one of the most important steps you can take.
And I'm not just being dramatic here. Getting this wrong isn't some tiny little mistake. It's a huge, expensive one. Honestly, confusing the role of a producer with an engineer is pretty much the #1 reason I see independent artists just blow their entire budget and end up with a record they're not even happy with.
And when that happens, this is what it looks like in the real world. Songs that are just never finished, mixes that sound incredible in the studio but then fall apart in your car speakers. You end up with these super frustrating sessions where you feel like you're spinning your wheels, and it all just leads to wasted money and, worst of all, weak recordings that don't do your vision justice.
So let's just break it all down. The absolute simplest way to think about this is a split right down the middle: creative vision versus technical execution. They're two totally different mindsets, and you know what? They're usually two different people.
This slide right here, this is the core of it all. So on the left, you've got the producer. They are all about the what. What's the song's structure? What should the arrangement feel like? They're your creative partner, your coach, pushing you to get that perfect performance. Then on the right, you have the engineer. They are all about the how. How do we actually record that perfect guitar tone? They're the ones obsessing over mic placement, setting the right levels, and just making sure every single sound is captured perfectly.
And if you need a really simple way to remember it, this quote just nails it. The producer is all about the destination, what this song is ultimately going to be. The engineer, they are the expert pilot making sure you get there, that the entire journey of recording is technically perfect.
And just to add one more little layer here, that word engineer isn't always just one person. A lot of the time, especially on a pro record, it's a whole team. You might have a recording engineer who just captures the sounds, a totally separate mix engineer who balances everything, and then a mastering engineer who puts on that final commercial shine. They are all specialists in technical execution.
Okay, so now that we've got the definitions down, let's make this practical. How does this help you build your team? How do you figure out who you actually need to hire for your next project?
Let's start with a really simple self-assessment. Think about your own process right now. Do you have a hard drive full of half-finished ideas? Do you ever feel like your songs have potential, but you're just not sure how to get them over the finish line? Do you need someone in the room to push you to deliver a truly killer vocal take?
If you found yourself nodding your head to any of that, then there's your answer. It's crystal clear. You are looking for creative leadership. You need a producer.
Okay, but what about the flip side? Let's say your songs are completely done. The arrangements are locked in, you know exactly what you want everything to sound like, but you just don't have the gear or the technical skills to capture it all beautifully.
Well, in that case, what you're really looking for is technical excellence. You need an engineer who can take your finished vision and turn it into a clean, professional recording. Simple as that.
And here's the really crucial part. This isn't always an either-or choice. In fact, pretty much all of the greatest records you love, they had both. They had a producer steering the creative ship, and they had an engineer making sure that the technical foundation was absolutely rock solid. They are different jobs, and they work best together.
Which, of course, leads us to the big one, the question everyone's thinking about: money. How in the world do you budget for this? What should you actually expect to pay for this kind of professional help?
Well, first, it really helps to know how these folks get paid. Producers usually work on a flat fee per song, and sometimes they'll take a small piece of the royalties, which are called points. Engineers, on the other hand, are typically paid for their time, so either an hourly rate, a full day rate, or maybe a flat fee for each mix.
So what does that actually look like in real dollars? Well, for an indie artist, hiring a producer is probably going to run you somewhere between, say, $300 and $1,500 per song. And yeah, that fee can go way, way higher for bigger names, but this is a pretty realistic ballpark to start with.
Now, for an engineer, you're almost always looking at an hourly rate, and that can be anything from maybe $30 an hour on the low end to $150 or more for a top-tier engineer. And this is exactly why being prepared for your sessions is so important, because time is literally money.
And check this out. This is how it all comes together. Here's a sample budget for just one professionally done song. You've got your producer's fee, maybe a few hours with a recording engineer, a separate charge for mixing, and that final mastering fee. You can see how it adds up to around $1,500, but now every single one of those costs is tied to a super clear, distinct job.
All right, let's wrap this up by looking at how you can avoid the most common traps so you can make sure every dollar you spend is worth it.
We've spent this whole time on that very first point because it really is the most important one. But these others, they're just as critical. You have to define exactly what you're getting. You have to get it in writing. And please, whatever you do, do not skip professional mixing and mastering. That is the final step that actually makes your song sound like a real record.
So, I'll just leave you with this one final question to think about for your next project. When you look at the people you're about to hire, ask yourself, is this team built for creative vision, or is it built for technical execution, or both? Knowing the answer to that, well, that's the first real step to making a record you're going to be proud of for a long, long time.